Everyone, welcome back. Tonight, we'll hear from a former park ranger about why he left the forestry service and went to work in an office. Keep an eye out. If you like, you won't want to miss this. Both real and creepypasta stories are scary. Make sure to subscribe, click that bell, and smash that thumbs up. Now let's get spooky. When people ask me why I quit my job as a park ranger and went to work in an office instead of in the great outdoors, I tell them that I didn't want to spend all my time in the office. It takes all of my self-control and willpower not to tell them that no beautiful sights can make up for the sight of a rotting, half-eaten body, teenager. I can't go back to my old job, not because I don't want to. When I'm driving home from work and I see a damn tree, I start to cry. Since that search happened in the last month of my job, I can't even bring myself to look at pictures of the forest. It all started on a warm, quiet summer day, the 1st of August, when my partner, Holly, and I were doing general maintenance on well-worn trails. Suddenly, we heard hurried footsteps, frantic panting, and cries for help. When we turned quickly to face the source of the sound, we saw a clearly upset woman running towards us, shouting and waving her arms. We yelled back at her to get her attention, but she didn't stop. She didn't stop until she ran into me headfirst, still crying and begging for help. My son is no longer with me. He went away. He's gone. Help me, small black square, she screamed right in front of me. Her face was red, and mascara and tears had mixed together and spread all over it. I tried to make her feel better, but she wouldn't listen. That poor mother kept going on and on and on. I don't know if I would have been able to calm her down if Holly hadn't been there. Holly took her away from me, made her sit down, and made her drink some water. It took her about 5 minutes to calm down enough to make sentences that made sense. It's okay. Give us the details. He will be found. We always do. Holly put her hand on the woman's shoulder and said, "He can't be far away, Mom." I've always wished I had a voice like hers. I had seen her talk to 2 drunk men and stop a fight between them. We used to joke that she was really a fool in disguise. We were walking and Chester was right behind me. I could see it from my back. She showed us a picture on her phone of the smaller boy with blonde hair smiling and holding a cat. My phone rang, so I looked down at my purse and let go of his hand to get my phone. When I looked back up, he was gone. She began whistling again. I looked down for a short time. "What do you mean when you say gone?" I said something. The damn kid couldn't have vanished without a trace. I was thinking to myself. It was as if a strong gust of wind had flown by and grabbed him. I felt something, and he wasn't there a second ago, she said as she sobbed over and over again. "Don't be afraid, miss. He probably liked what he saw off the path, so he went into the forest. Don't worry, it happens all the time. We'll find him," Holly told her as we let her out of the park and into the lobby. We gave her some tea to calm her down, but then decided not to wait any longer. Called for a search. We gave the picture she had shown us to all the active rangers and then joined the search. We went into the forest and walked the whole length of the path where the boy was said to have gone missing. We didn't say anything and kept our eyes open for any clues about what might have happened to the boy. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, so we went back to the place she told us about. She stopped where a big oak tree was. Now you can see that the path I was talking about is very narrow and is surrounded on both sides by trees that go for miles into the park. Still, it's close to the park's entrance, so we were pretty sure we'd find the boy before he got too far away. We were searching with a few other experienced rangers, but Holly, and I decided to split up so we could cover more ground. I stepped off the trail and started looking around slowly and carefully. After walking for about half an hour, I had nothing to show for it. I talked to Holly and some other rangers, hoping they might have good news, even though I knew that if they did, they would have already told me. My worst fears came true. The boy was nowhere to be found. Small black square, small black square, small black square, small black square. I remember thinking that this was going to be a big problem that the police would have to deal with. I was about to turn around and walk back when I noticed something strange in the knee-high grass. It was a small red dot, almost too small to see. Probably the only reason I saw it was because of that. It made a big difference and turned the space between the trees into a sea of green. I walked slowly toward a small, red, rectangular shape that was lying on the grass. It said baseball legends in big letters. I turned it around to see a smiling black man with no hair. Under the picture, it was clear, the name Barry Bonds was written. This was a baseball card, and it looked like it had never been used. It didn't have any creases or other damage that a piece of paper could get from moving around in the wild and being blown around by the wind. After telling other people about what I had found, I decided to dig deeper and keep looking. When the dust started to settle, I couldn't find out any more. I went back to the lobby and met up with the other people. They had even less luck than I did, which is sad. The baseball card I found was there before me, so I took it to the mother, who was sad. I almost wish I hadn't opened the car door. Her eyes were wide and seemed dry. She figured out that the tears were Chester's because he never left the house without them. She said that he likes to carry them in a breast pocket of his vest. "Where on the grass did you find it?" I replied that I didn't know what else to do, and before the mother could start crying again, Holly stopped her with a suggestion that would calm her down. "Even though it's just one card, it's likely that it fell out of his pocket while he was walking." "No, you don't understand?" the woman yelled. "He watches over them like valuables. He always keeps the pocket closed and checks to make sure they are safe. He went with someone. He went with someone." She screamed, "Someone took him away from me." This time, she didn't have a console with her, so Holly drove her home and told her she would keep her up to date on our search. We thought this would be an easy search, but it wasn't. So the police didn't get involved right away. But now, the bad, serious side of this disappearance was starting to show. Holly was about to park her Jeep when the police showed up. After taking the mother home, we continued the search overnight with their help. We didn't find anything that night, and we didn't find anything for the next 26 days and nights, either. All of the working rangers put their regular jobs aside to help with this search. We all worked together with the police and the many volunteers. But every day brought more bad news. Every day, Holly and I would go further and further into the woods with a search dog. We didn't find anything, though. The dogs didn't pick up any scent, and neither did the air searches or the forest searches. It was like, stop being little Chester. His mother didn't stay at home like we told her to. Instead, she waited at the edge of the forest until late at night, when we would come back to give her more bad news. She wanted to go out and look for him herself, but we couldn't let her. She was already a mess, so we had to leave an employee at the front desk with her so she wouldn't hurt herself. Every time I saw her, my heart hurt more and more, because every time I saw her, I couldn't give her anything but more disappointment. Holly acted like she didn't care, but her eyes said more than words could about how much she was hurting. The 27th of August was when we finally found what was left of Chester. Because of this whole thing, I can't sleep unless the lights are on and I take a lot of pills. This is why I still wake up screaming every night, remembering how awful those times were. Holly and I had been looking all day, and as night fell, we decided on a whim that we shouldn't go back or rest, but should hurry. We were in the middle of a forest, and the trees and branches were getting closer together. Every step we took. Our search dog was already an old dog who was getting ready to retire. Still, he was one of the sharpest dogs we had. We had a long history of finding teenagers who had gotten drunk and wandered off the path, so we were sure that if we missed anything, he would find it. It was around 2 in the morning. When we came to a clearing with a small hill in the middle, I recognized it from a map I had looked at earlier. Holly and I both had to hear me say that I had never been here before. We walked over to the hill and rested our backs on it, taking deep breaths and enjoying this moment of calm. Suddenly, Gesture stood up and violently sniffed the air around him. Then, he started barking like crazy. We got up and used our flashlights to look around, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We then looked more closely at Gesture, who was still acting crazy. The jester was barking at the bound. We decided to go for a walk and find out what was upsetting them. I set him free, and he ran to the other side of the hill. Holly and I crossed it and met up with him. Now that he was dead quiet and fixed on one spot, Holly and I shined our flashlights in the direction that Gesture was pointing. I noticed right away that there was something strange about the spot where grass was growing and thriving all over the mound. Here it seemed like it was, small black square, stuffed. I grabbed a handful of grass and pulled it back, revealing a hard wooden surface underneath. Holly and I quickly started pulling out the grass to get to whatever was hiding behind it. Our efforts weren't in vain. It was a dry, heavy log standing straight up and blocking the way. The sun could be seen in the places where the log didn't cover it up. We found out that there was definitely some kind of room in there. In retrospect, a bad smell came from that room. We should have figured it out. Holly asked, should we go inside? With one hand over her nose and the other on her hip. I wish I had been more hungry that day. We should have called for help. I wish we had never seen that stupid hill. Yes, please help me pull this out, I said, telling Jester to move back and wait. He listened. We both grabbed the log and pulled it back, which showed us a way in. I will always be sorry that I turned on my flashlight inside and saw a pile of dry, dirty bones. A small, weak body was there. Maggots were already living inside of him. He was missing skin on his arms, legs, and face, but what scared me the most was that his rib cage had been ripped open with brute force and was still fresh. Trails of blood were all over the dirt floor. I couldn't take the sight any longer, so my arms moved the flashlight up on their own. When I moved quickly, I saw 3 pairs of bloody, dirty feet. Molly was breathing shallowly behind me, and I could hear it almost against my will. I pointed the flashlight up and screamed in horror at the horrible thing I saw. The jester's menacing growls filled the screaming silence around us, holding us captive with these things. 3 of them were there. They were naked and covered in blood from the tips of their long fingernails to the rest of their rotting teeth. Their unsettling smiles, which almost showed pride in what they had done, showed their teeth. All 3 of them growled at the same time. They made a terrible, raspy sound. I worry that will always be in my head. As fast as lightning, they stood up and charged at me. Jester ran up and grabbed the closest one by the leg. I pulled out my gun anyway. I only got 1 shot into the thing's stomach, but it was a good one. Gesture attacked me before they got too strong and I lost my mind. It was Holly that kept me alive. I'd rather find out when she and my other co-workers came to see me in the hospital. When those things tried to eat me at that moment, Holly threw a full magazine, and then another one for good measure. But she couldn't be a consultant because she accidentally killed a man who jumped up to grab the neck of one of the monsters. So, now you know why I stopped working as a park ranger. That's why I cry when I see a tree. When I heard that Chester's mother had killed herself, my heart broke into a million pieces. But do you know when I actually cried the hardest? This morning while I was watching the news on TV and drinking my coffee, I screamed at the TV and threw the remote with all my might, shattering the display when the freaking news anchor had reported a teenage girl who had went missing in the national park. Well, I hope you all liked the story I told tonight. If you gave it a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe and click that bell so you never miss another video. As always, spread me like butter. Yeah. Good night, and keep being scary. Small black square, 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 small black square.